Vintage culture. Discovering the promised land. Brazil's vintage culture has gone from being a bedroom producer to one of the biggest DJs in the world, playing huge stadiums at home, at Ibiza's best clubs, and at festivals all over the world. But while he's already achieved so much, his debut album, Promised Land, marks a bold new chapter. Kristen J. Carroll speaks to him about his tireless work ethic, his musical evolution, and his admiration for the late racing driver Ayrton Senna. Vintage culture plays to tens of thousands of people each weekend, but Lucas Rafael Ruiz Hespenhol sometimes feels lonely. DJing at his level of superstardom can often be a nomadic existence, and things got even more crazy in the final run-up to the release of his debut album last month. 24 hours a day, I was thinking and listening to every second, every detail of it, so this pressure is off a little now. Ruiz, a 24/7 go-getter, has an exhausting work ethic. He looks tired when we speak, and in messages beforehand expressed his need to recharge after an insane schedule that has already seen him traverse the planet several times in 2024. He spends many, many months a year living out of hotels and travels the world with only carry-on luggage, headphones and a custom pillow to help with sleep on long-haul flights. But the Brazilian still loves to party. Even years after breaking out onto the world stage, the allure of a late-night carry-on is something he cannot resist. But there is always a motive beyond pure pleasure. "It's a pressure I put on myself," he says. "I love to play new music, to test new music, to learn." So rather than retire to his hotel room, he can often be found doing marathon sets that sometimes reach into double-digit hours. He admits with a wry grin that he will always find it hard to say no to almost any invitation to play. Partly because of that, it has taken a week to get him on Zoom. In that time, he has played to 10,000 people at Docklands Festival in Germany, soundtracked a rave in an ancient Roman quarry in Croatia, then did the afters, of course, and commandeered the first 3-hour set of his season-long residency at High Ibiza. He is staying on the island for summer, high up in the hills in a traditional white Ibizan villa with uninterrupted sea views. There's some bohemian furniture out on the terrace next to a deep blue plunge pool, sun loungers, a carved wooden Buddha, and a stone statue of a dog. Last night he was invited to network at a private party. He didn't fancy it at first, but was unsurprisingly talked into it. It turned out that the party was great, he says at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. His eyes are red and glassy, which he soon explains away with a smile. "I only just got in." Across previous days, he has variously been asleep all afternoon or up stupidly early to work. Keeping such erratic hours is what makes him so hard to get hold of, but once you have him, the softly spoken 30-year-old gives you his full attention. In between sleep, work and travel, he did 15 shows in one 19-day period in May. He likes to watch the medical drama series Grey's Anatomy, to have little moments to turn off from the world. And that's about all he does. There is no time, and even less inclination to do much else, because Ruiz refuses to take his foot off the gas. "I just love it," he says. "My head doesn't stop. I'm always chasing, always trying to research, always thinking, okay, I could be better at this or that. I have never been to the cinema. I don't know how to drive a car. Really, my passion for the music is so big, man, so I spend all my time on it." Years before becoming vintage culture, Ruiz completed high school in his birthplace, Mundo Novo, in the centre-west of Brazil, and went on to study law down south in Moringa, so he is no academic slouch. That may be why he likes the project side of what he does, of being on top of everything. From his record deals to his release schedule, the promotion of his own festival to the exact slots he plays where and when around the world. These days, he has a big team to help him, but he remains proactive on all fronts. "My life could sound sad, but to me, my life is my career. My life is vintage culture." While that's fine for him, his mother, the real boss, always brings a different perspective. She has long been by his side, keeping him grounded and advising him. She lives with him at his home back in Sao Paulo and constantly reminds him to look after himself, eat well and stay fit. If she calls when he's on the road, he answers no matter what. She is always like, "Lucas, I want you to have a kid." And I say, "Mama, I don't know if I can do that for you yet. I just turned 30, so I'm still young. I have time. I'm living my dream. I wished for it for a long, long time. Sometimes I get tired, but I will never complain. Mama Ruiz also comes in handy for looking after Lucas's beloved dogs, Bento and Zay. They are corgis, famous for being a favourite pet of Queen Elizabeth II, and often appear on his social media, where they seem to bring him childish glee. Z is a younger, newer addition who breaks everything. Yesterday, his mum called to say he'd eaten something he shouldn't have, so she had to take him to the vet. Dogs are my distraction, says Lucas. He also loves football, but can't play, because he has problems with his vision, so a doctor told him to avoid all contact sports. Given he used to play as a goalkeeper for his hometown side, that was hard news to take. These days he has to make do with being a fan. Back home there is Palmeiras, which is one of the most successful clubs in the history of Brazil's top division, and he recently watched them win their annual derby with rival Santos on a rare night off. In Europe, he loves Real Madrid, a team that has traditionally been home to some of Brazil's most famous footballing exports. He recently had one of the best experiences of my life, playing a first-ever dance party at their breathtaking 80,000-seater stadium, Santiago Bernabéu. He is no stranger to the most monumental stages, having played landmark events like Tomorrowland, Burning Man, Exit Festival, Coachella, and Vintage is a Festival, his own one-man event, which he soundtracked in Brazil for 12 hours in front of 20,000 die-hard fans, from sunset well into the next day. But ask about a career highlight, and there is one quick answer: Promised Land. Ruiz's debut album has been 4 years in the making. While many artists use their first long player to show off a new side to their sound, for Ruiz, it was quite the opposite. In the studio, he has long since broadened his musical horizons and moved away from the Brazilian bass and house he started with. But he knew that fans, in particular those back home, weren't ready for it. So he kept the album under wraps until now, despite much of it being written back in the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021. Those times brought about a huge change for Ruiz. In the preceding few months, he had begun to venture out on the international circuit. After making a name nationally in Brazil, he got early bookings in Egypt and Russia, but has admitted since that often only tiny crowds would show up. His music wasn't connecting in the same way it had done on his home circuit. It was me pretending, wanting to show Brazilians I was an international success. The time at home during lockdown was initially a struggle. I wasn't enjoying work before the pandemic, so I had time to reflect. I reset my body and my mind, and I came back as a better person. His fans had rather chained him to his early sound. He grew to hate playing the songs they wanted to hear, but the healthier mindset gave him the confidence to start experimenting with his music and widening his horizons. He felt EDM, as it had been, was dead. It lost its power. People didn't want that stuff at home during the pandemic. He instead took inspiration from seeing the likes of the Martinez brothers in Ibiza and set to work finding my own truth and making hundreds of tunes, many of which now feature on Promised Land. The album is a hugely collaborative affair, with more than 20 people in all working on it in some capacity or other. While some might call them ghost producers, Ruiz says he has no shame to talk about it and says that he is honoured to be able to share the creative process with people he respects. It would be impossible to do it alone, along with the touring life I lead. The executive producers include Caesar Funk, Trappy Gilmore, Adam Kirshen, as well as many more collaborating artists, vocalists and writers. Working with them is like a marriage and only works because they have a great understanding. After so many hours of obsessive listening and musical research, Ruiz knows the sounds he wants, and those experienced studio heads know how to get them for him. To me, it doesn't matter how it is made. It must have truth, it must please the audience, and it must have a heart and feelings. Do you think Michael Jackson did Thriller on his own? Did Quincy Jones do it on his own? No. They help to expand the language of the artist. I love to collaborate because I have a vision. If I make a little loop, I'm always thinking, who can I send this to? Which person has something to add on this and make it better? Musically, there are homages to all the artists Ruiz loves from the 80s, 90s and 00s. He cites the melodies of Avicii, the progressive sounds of Camel Fat, the synth blasts of Artbat, the guitars of New Order and the grooves of Kraftwerk as all having an influence. Rather than pure club tracks, this is an elaborate and melodic album rooted in proper songwriting, with plenty of singable top lines that lodge in the brain and are ripe for becoming crossover hits and radio regulars. Importantly, the lyrics carry real meaning. They're autobiographical and give plenty of insight into Ruiz's thinking. They would start with him sharing some keywords and thoughts that writers then developed with him, working on the accompanying melodies. The title and opening song, for example, is an invitation to fans to join Lucas in the promised land of his new sonic world. I want them to listen, and if they like it, they are ready, they will follow and enter the rest of the album with me. Hero is another standout and a very personal plea from Ruiz. He says to his fans that, I get tired, I get happy. Guys, I am just like you. Which is why the song has lines like, you'll never make a hero out of me, and you need to understand that I am just a man. Cut me down and watch me fall. I'm human underneath it all. Not wanting to be a hero to his Brazilian fans is not an empty brag or some deluded god complex. For an idea of just how important he is to them, check out the comments under anything he posts on YouTube, next to the usual shouts of legend, love you my jewel and you're an inspiration, are more moving and personal messages. The man who saved the pandemic, says one. It was really cool. I would go to sleep watching you. Lots of joy. You helped us in some way to get through that very difficult time, writes another, capturing the escapism felt by people who enjoyed Lucas's frequent lockdown live streams. They were high-tech affairs with green screens and even a fan cam, so he could see people dancing along at home while the virus hit Brazil with the second highest death toll in the world. Because of those streams, thousands of people are heavily invested in a man they have never met. They speak of being happy to have shared in his evolution and feel a part of the journey he is still on. While Ruiz might not want to be a hero to others, that doesn't stop him from having his own. Three-time world Formula One champion Ayrton Senna was such an idol in Brazil that he was honoured with a state funeral after his untimely death on the 1st of May 1994. That accident at the Imola race circuit in Italy came before Ruiz was born, but such was the legacy of the man that he remains one of Brazil's most revered sons. He was known for his single-minded focus, pursuit of perfection, and for chasing victory at all costs, all traits confessed perfectionist Ruiz undoubtedly shares. Senna did much charity work at home, and the Instituto Ayrton Senna continues to help create opportunities for underprivileged children and young Brazilians through education. Ruiz's love for the man runs so deep, in fact, that he bought a car even though he cannot drive. Not just any car, but the iconic black and yellow Lotus that Senna drove in his first seasons in Formula One in 1985 and 1986. He keeps it not at his house, but inside it, in the living room on a shiny polished concrete floor next to a piano and below some of his own streaming accolades, which hang from the wall. Inside the same house, he once had a fully decked-out club, but not anymore. Following a party he hosted after the Brazilian Grand Prix one year, it got trashed. "They killed my house," he says, getting animated. For maybe the first time in his life, he now says no to parties at his. Instead, he's converted the club into a space for making music, inviting collaborators over, and for testing new tunes through the giant speakers he kept in place. Ruiz was born in the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso do Sul, but grew up just across the border in Caeté, a farming city in Paraguay. It has few more than 10,000 inhabitants, and a Google image search for it reveals nothing more than dirt track roads, a municipal building, and a hotel. If you saw it, man, you would think, how did this kid get to where he is? Life is crazy, man. Life is crazy. He comes from a family of farmers and reckons he would have followed in that tradition eventually if it weren't for the music. He used to dream of being a harvest pilot, flying over fields, spraying fertilizer and water, but these days the only flying he does is across continents. Because his hometown is on the border with Brazil, it is a well-known drug trading route operated by armed outlaws. As a kid, Ruiz never saw any of that with his own eyes, but the latent threat of it caused his mum to stop him from playing outside much, which, he agrees, is maybe why he likes a fast-paced life now. Radio in Brazil is not very good, he says, and with no local record shops, and it being a time before the internet really took off, Ruiz was a relative latecomer to music discovery. He first fell for electronic sounds after hearing I'll Fly With You by Gigi D'Agostino, which he found while thumbing through his uncle's CD collection. Deep dives into YouTube followed. His late father, too, played music in the family home, mostly from the 80s, synth-heavy, and from bands like New Order, Depeche Mode, and Tears for Fears. He was a party boy even more than me, laughs Ruiz, who lost his father just as he was on the cusp of his international breakout. He would be super proud now and would probably be here with me in Ibiza. As soon as he got a computer, young Lucas was holed up at home making rudimental beats. It was an early bedroom edit of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall back in 2013 that first caught fire, went viral, and started to get him booking requests at local, regional, and then national parties. He couldn't even DJ when the first calls came, so quickly learnt how to put a set together on Ableton. He only corrected that many years later when he taught himself how to DJ properly during the pandemic. I have to say, I got a bit lazy about it, and also touring consumed all my time. So when I had the chance, I wanted to open up new possibilities, new creative avenues, to be able to say yes when people asked me to play back-to-back with them. That is something he now does a lot, most recently with the likes of Argy and fellow Brazilian star DJ Anna, and next up is back-to-back with Carl Cox after the UK techno titan reached out and suggested it to Ruiz. Ahead of such sets, he likes to ask artists to send him a few tunes they might play, so he has an idea, and the sets can be tighter, more balanced energy, but admits that, even then, things don't always work out. There isn't always the right chemistry there. When it comes to his Ibiza residency, Ruiz is the one who sets the tone. Back once again after 2 successful previous editions, he plays every Wednesday in High Ibiza's club room this summer, while chief headliner Fisher plays the main room. It's a big deal for anyone, but never one to settle, Ruiz says one of his remaining goals is to have his own season-long party with his name on the flyer first. That's my dream, in time. But now I will be patient and build. The sound system has been tweaked this year, so I'm really happy with it. Right now, his DJing is just where he wants it to be. I'm playing a little bit of tech house, a little bit of Afro house. It's groovy, melodic. Sometimes a bit indie and a little less vocals than before, more underground. His week 2 set is just hours away, so this afternoon will follow a usual routine. He will start thinking about what music he wants to play and what might work, and will finish any final edits and remixes to keep the set fresh and as interesting for him as it is for the crowd. He will also eat well. He has a chef who takes care of that side of things and, despite the early hour, holds up a plate of steamed fish he has half eaten for breakfast. I also love to sleep, so I will sleep some more. The business mind of Ruiz comes out when talk turns to the United States. He mentions he would love to play the famous open-air Red Rocks Amphitheatre in the western United States near Morrison, Colorado, but recognizes the work that has to be done before that is even a possibility. You have to build a fan base, like a band would do. You have to play hard ticket shows in the cities all around there. So that's what I'm doing later in the year in New York, Louisiana, Chicago, DC, Denver, San Diego. The crowd there really gets me, he continues. They understand. They are so open. There's a lot of Brazilians, but also there's a lot of Americans, and they're crazy. I like that. They like it a little more commercial. In Europe, they want to go deeper in the music, but I'm doing my thing there, and it's working. It is still a different story back in Brazil. I'm trying to get them out of the old Lucas sound and trying to bring them to the new Lucas. He will soon be back home once more to headline his own long-running festival, Sotrack Boa, which translates roughly as Good Tracks Only. The 2-day affair welcomes many die-hard fans to Sao Paulo's 49,000 capacity Neo Química Arena and is the biggest dedicated dance music event in Brazil. It's sold out and I am worried, says the generally super laid-back Ruiz. I am more worried about playing my festival than playing somewhere like Time Warp, because I know the people in Brazil are there because they want to listen to something specific. It's a paradox, but I will figure out some way to deliver for them. Maybe I'll play 2 tracks for me, 1 for them. As large as that festival is, Ruiz often gets requests to play even more gargantuan events at home, with crowds of up to 1 million people, like the famous carnival. I have my limits, and that's too much for me. I know the people there. They want to hear a little bit of country music, a bit of Brazilian funk, not just my sounds, so it would give me anxiety. I don't belong there, you know? There will be no such pressure on what he plays during 4 special sets in July. He is hosting a month-long residency on the UK's BBC Radio 1 and is looking forward to the different challenge that will bring. Naturally, he has already got up before sunrise more than once to try a couple of track ideas. There is a quiet humility to Ruiz. He mentions that having My Angels with him on the road is hugely important, one he met 12 years ago and has been close ever since. The other he has been friends with ever since he was 4 years old at preschool. With them, I feel safe. They have my back. They know what's good for me. Because in this industry, you've got a lot of people interested in you for the wrong reasons. He says the one thing he wishes he could change is the travel. Right now, he still mostly uses domestic airlines that are susceptible to delays, which can mean he occasionally misses gigs. But more than that, the time spent in airports he sees as a waste. In Brazil, he has access to a private jet, which, understandably, he'd like to use all the time. Because he has a lifelong fascination with aviation, the pilot even once let him take control, which, in a small way, allowed him to live out his childhood dream of being a harvest pilot. It was a pleasure, a great escape for me. With that, time is up. Lucas Rafael Ruiz Hespenhol has work to do and needs some sleep because soon vintage culture must come out to play.